The summer barbecue was in full swing when Marcus pulled me aside. The scent of grilled burgers mixed with the sweet aroma of jasmine from Sarah's garden, and laughter echoed across the backyard where our friends had gathered to celebrate little Emma's first birthday. I was bouncing the adorable baby on my hip, marveling at her bright blue eyes and infectious giggle when I felt Marcus's hand on my shoulder. "Hey, can we talk outside for a minute?" His voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before, tight and controlled in a way that made my stomach clench. I glanced around the crowded patio, where Sarah was serving cake, her husband David manning the grill, and our group of college friends scattered across lawn chairs with drinks in hand. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy, celebrating this milestone in Sarah and David's life. Emma gurgled contentedly in my arms, reaching for the colorful streamers hanging overhead. "Sure," I said, though something in Marcus's expression made me hesitate. We'd been dating for 2 years, and I knew his moods well enough to recognize when something was seriously wrong. "Let me just give Emma back to Sarah first." "Actually," Marcus said, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly, "bring her with us." That stopped me cold. Why would he want me to bring someone else's baby to what I assumed would be a private conversation? My mind immediately jumped to the obvious conclusion. He was jealous of the attention I'd been giving Emma all afternoon. I'd been completely smitten with the little girl from the moment Sarah had placed her in my arms, cooing over her tiny fingers and making silly faces that sent her into peals of laughter. Maybe Marcus felt left out, or worse, maybe he thought I was being too obvious about wanting children when we'd never seriously discussed that future together. "Marcus, if this is about me holding Emma, I can explain, please." His voice was barely above a whisper, but there was an urgency there that made me nod. "Just trust me on this." I followed him toward the side gate that led to the front yard, Emma still nestled against my shoulder. She seemed perfectly content, playing with the pendant on my necklace while making soft, babbling sounds. As we walked, I caught Sarah's eye across the patio. She was laughing at something David had said, completely at ease. But when she saw me heading toward the gate with her daughter, she gave me a questioning look. "We'll be right back," I called out, forcing a smile I didn't feel. The front yard was quieter, though we could still hear the party continuing behind the wooden fence. Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, a nervous habit I'd learned to recognize, and began pacing across the grass. The setting sun cast long shadows between the houses, and somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking persistently. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, adjusting Emma's position as she began to fuss slightly. "Are you upset that I've been holding her? Because I know we haven't talked about kids much, but this isn't about jealousy." Marcus cut me off, stopping his pacing to face me directly. His brown eyes were serious, almost haunted. "Jen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. How well do you really know Sarah?" The question caught me completely off guard. "What do you mean? She's been my friend since sophomore year of college. We've been close for over 6 years. "I know that's what you think." Marcus glanced back toward the fence, then at Emma, who had grown quiet in my arms. "But there are things about her past that she's never told you. Things that might change how you see this whole situation." A chill ran down my spine despite the warm evening air. "Marcus, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say. 3 weeks ago, my firm took on a new case. A missing persons case that's been cold for over a year. A woman named Jennifer Morrison disappeared from Portland with her 6-month-old daughter. The police suspected the father might have taken them, but they could never prove it. My heart began to race. What does that have to do with Sarah? Marcus pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a police missing persons flyer, showing a woman who looked remarkably similar to Sarah, the same auburn hair, the same delicate features, though the woman in the photo appeared more tired, more worn down than the confident friend I knew. "Her real name is Jennifer Morrison," Marcus said quietly. "And that baby you're holding? Her name isn't Emma. It's Lily Morrison, and her father has been looking for her for over a year." The world seemed to tilt around me. Emma, Lily. made a soft, cooing sound and reached up to touch my face with her tiny hand, completely oblivious to the bombshell that had just exploded around us. I looked down at her cherubic face, searching for any sign that what Marcus was saying could possibly be true. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Sarah's married to David. They've been together since college. I was at their wedding 3 years ago." "Were you at their wedding? Or at a wedding they said was theirs?" Marcus asked gently. "Think about it, Jen. Really think about it. How much do you actually know about David's background? Have you ever met his family? His friends from before college?" The questions hit like physical blows. I tried to remember details from Sarah's wedding, but they seemed strangely fuzzy. It had been a small ceremony at a botanical garden, which Sarah had explained by saying they wanted something intimate. David's family couldn't make it, she'd said. Some kind of conflict or emergency I couldn't quite recall. And now that I thought about it, all of David's groomsmen had been guys from his graduate program that I'd never met before or since. "But Emma was born here," I protested weakly. "I visited Sarah in the hospital after she gave birth." Marcus shook his head. "Lily Morrison would be almost exactly the right age now. Think about it. When did Sarah announce she was pregnant? When did you actually see her with a visible bump?" The memories felt slippery, like trying to grasp water. I remembered Sarah telling me she was pregnant, but the details were vague. She'd always been thin, and she'd worn loose clothing throughout what I'd assumed was her pregnancy. I'd attributed her secretiveness about doctor's appointments and her reluctance to take maternity photos to her naturally private nature. "This is insane," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt doubt creeping in. "You're telling me that my best friend stole a baby and has been living a lie for over a year?" "I'm telling you that the evidence is pretty compelling," Marcus replied. "And there's more. The description Jennifer Morrison gave of the man she was involved with matches David almost exactly, right down to the scar on his left hand from what he told police was a childhood accident." I glanced down at Emma, Lily, who was now gripping my finger with surprising strength. Her blue eyes were so clear, so trusting. If what Marcus was saying was true, then this little girl had been stolen from her real family, and I'd been unknowingly helping to perpetuate that crime by being part of their social circle, by normalizing their life here. "What are we supposed to do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Marcus stepped closer, his expression filled with a mixture of determination and compassion. "We need to get her somewhere safe while I call my contact at the police department. They've been working with the Portland PD on this case, and they'll know how to handle the situation properly." "But what if you're wrong?" The question came out as a plea. "What if this is all some terrible mistake?" "Then we'll figure that out," Marcus said firmly. "But Jen, look at this baby. Really look at her. Look at her eyes, her features. Now think about Sarah and David. Do you see any resemblance at all?" For the first time, I studied Emma's face with critical eyes instead of the adoring gaze of a family friend. Her blue eyes were a clear, brilliant shade that was nothing like Sarah's hazel or David's brown. Her hair, though still fine and baby-soft, had hints of blonde that neither of her supposed parents possessed. Even her facial structure seemed different from what I would have expected from their genetic combination. "Oh my God," I breathed, the reality of the situation finally hitting me with full force. "What have they done?" From behind the fence, I could hear Sarah's voice calling out, "Jen, where did you go with Emma? David's about to light the candles on her cake." Marcus and I exchanged a look of pure panic. In a few moments, Sarah would come looking for us, and we'd have to face her knowing what we now suspected. The innocent birthday party had suddenly become something much more sinister, and I was holding the evidence in my arms. "We have to go back," I said, my voice shaking. "We can't just disappear with her. They'll know something's wrong." "You're right," Marcus agreed. "We need to be smart about this. Can you act normal for a few more minutes while I make some calls?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure how I was supposed to act normal when my entire world had just been turned upside down. As we walked back toward the gate, Emma began to fuss, perhaps sensing the tension that radiated from both Marcus and me. "Shh, sweetheart," I whispered, automatically rocking her gently. "It's going to be okay." But even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. Nothing would ever be okay again, not if my best friend really had stolen this precious child from her real family. And as we stepped back into the backyard full of laughter and celebration, I realized that I was about to become part of the most important deception of my life. Only this time, I'd be the one doing the lying. Walking back into the party felt like stepping into an alternate reality. Everything looked the same. The colorful balloons bobbing in the evening breeze, the remains of birthday cakes scattered across paper plates, our friends lounging in their lawn chairs with drinks in hand. But my perception of it all had fundamentally shifted. Sarah rushed over the moment she spotted us returning through the gate. "There you are!" she exclaimed, reaching for Emma with the natural gesture of a mother. I was starting to worry. Is everything okay? For a split second, I hesitated. Sarah's face showed nothing but genuine concern and the typical anxiety of a new mother separated from her child for too long. Could Marcus really be right about her? This was the same woman who had held my hair back when I was sick with food poisoning junior year, who had driven 4 hours to be with me when my grandmother died, who had spent countless nights listening to me cry over bad breakups. The idea that she could be capable of kidnapping seemed impossible. But then I handed Emma back to her and I watched Sarah's face carefully. There was relief there, yes, but something else too. A tension around her eyes that I might have missed if I hadn't been looking for it. And when Emma reached up to touch Sarah's face, there was a moment, just a fraction of a second, where Sarah almost seemed to flinch. "We're fine," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Marcus just needed to take a work call, and I thought Emma might enjoy seeing the front garden. Marcus had already moved toward the edge of the patio, his phone pressed to his ear with an urgency that made my stomach churn. I watched Sarah's eyes follow his movement, and I caught a flicker of something, suspicion, fear. It passed so quickly I might have imagined it. "Well, come on then," Sarah said, bouncing Emma gently. "We're about to sing Happy Birthday. But I can't believe my little angel is already 1 year old." The words hit me like a physical blow. If Marcus was right, then Emma wasn't 1 year old, and this wasn't really her birthday. It was all an elaborate lie, a performance designed to create the illusion of a normal family life. I followed Sarah back to where the group had gathered around a small table decorated with pink and white streamers, fighting to keep my expression neutral. David was lighting the single candle on a small cake, decorated with buttercream flowers. He looked up as we approached, flashing that easy smile that had always made him seem like such a devoted father and husband. "Perfect timing," he said. "Ready to make a wish for our birthday girl?" Our friends began singing Happy Birthday, their voices cheerful and off-key in the way that always happened at parties. I found myself mouthing the words while studying David's face. Marcus had mentioned a scar on his left hand, and now I could see it clearly, a pale line across his palm that I'd noticed before, but never questioned. According to Marcus, the real father of this baby had described that exact scar to police. As the song ended and everyone cheered, I watched Emma's reaction. She clapped her tiny hands together, delighted by all the attention, but there was something in her expression that struck me as odd. Most 1-year-olds would be somewhat overwhelmed by a crowd of adults singing at them, but Emma seemed almost familiar with being the center of attention, as if she'd been in situations like this before. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Sarah cooed, helping Emma blow out the candle. The group erupted in applause, and I forced myself to clap along while my mind raced. "Speech! Speech!" called out Jake, one of our college friends who'd had a few too many beers. David laughed and raised his beer bottle. "Well, I guess I should say something. This past year has been transformative. Sarah and I never imagined how much our lives would change when Emma came into our world. She's brought us more joy than we ever thought possible, and we're grateful every day for the chance to be her parents." The words should have been touching, but now they felt sinister. Every phrase seemed loaded with double meaning. Our lives would change when Emma came into our world, not when she was born, but when she came into their world. They were grateful for the chance to be her parents. Not that they were her parents, but that they had the chance to be. I was reading too much into things, I told myself. The stress of Marcus's revelation was making me paranoid, seeing hidden meanings where none existed. But then I caught David's eye as he finished his toast, and for just a moment, his smile faltered. He was looking directly at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, assessment maybe, or concern about something I might have noticed. Marcus returned from his phone call just as people were starting to serve themselves pieces of cake. He caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Whatever conversations he'd had apparently confirmed his suspicions. "Hey, David," Marcus said, approaching with casual friendliness that I knew was completely forced. "Great party. Emma's really growing up fast." "Thanks, man," David replied, but I noticed he'd shifted slightly so that Sarah and Emma were positioned behind him. "Yeah, it's crazy how quickly they change at this age." "I bet," Marcus continued. "Sarah mentioned you guys lived in Portland before moving here. Must have been hard to leave family behind." It was a trap, and I held my breath, waiting for David's response. We'd never heard much about their life before college, and Sarah had always been vague about her family background. "Oh, you know how it is," David said with a laugh that sounded forced. "Sometimes you need a fresh start, new opportunities and all that." "Of course," Marcus agreed. "What part of Portland were you in?" "I've got some clients up there." David's pause was barely noticeable, but I caught it. "Just outside the city. Pretty quiet area. You probably wouldn't know it." Sarah had gone very still behind David, and I noticed she was holding Emma a little tighter than before. The baby was starting to fuss, perhaps picking up on the tension that was building around the adults. "Well," Sarah said brightly, "I think someone's getting tired. It's past her usual bedtime." "Already?" asked Jessica, another friend from college. "But we haven't even done presents yet." "We can do those tomorrow," Sarah said firmly. "Emma needs her sleep." It was a reasonable explanation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was looking for an excuse to end the evening, as if she sensed that something was wrong and wanted to get Emma somewhere private. "Actually," I heard myself saying, "I'd love to help with the bedtime routine. I've been hoping to get some practice for when I have kids of my own." The suggestion seemed to hit both Sarah and David like a physical blow. They exchanged a quick glance that confirmed my worst fears. They absolutely did not want me anywhere near Emma right now. "That's sweet of you, Jen," Sarah said carefully, "but Emma's been a little clingy lately. She gets upset when anyone except David or me tries to put her down." It was plausible, but I knew it wasn't true. Emma had been perfectly content with me all evening, and she'd never shown any signs of separation anxiety during my previous visits. "Maybe another time then," I said, trying to keep my voice light. Marcus stepped closer to me, and I felt his hand briefly touch my back, a gesture of support that I desperately needed. "We should probably head out soon anyway," he said. "Thanks for including us in Emma's special day." As our friends began the process of saying goodbye and gathering their things, I found myself studying every interaction between Sarah, David, and Emma with new eyes. The way David positioned himself between Emma and other people, the way Sarah's smile never quite reached her eyes when someone complimented her daughter, the way they both seemed eager for everyone to leave. When it was our turn to say goodbye, I leaned in to give Emma one last hug. As I held her close, she looked up at me with those brilliant blue eyes and made a soft sound that almost sounded like "Mama." Sarah immediately tensed. "She's just babbling," she said quickly. "She makes all kinds of sounds that don't mean anything yet." But I had heard enough babies talk to know the difference between random babbling and intentional sounds. Emma had been trying to say something specific, and Sarah's reaction suggested she knew exactly what it was. As Marcus and I walked to his car, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Behind us, the house was being quickly cleared of party debris, and I could see Sarah and David moving around inside with an efficiency that seemed more like the behavior of people packing to leave than parents cleaning up after a birthday party. "They're going to run," I said as soon as we were out of earshot. "I know," Marcus replied grimly. That's why I've already called Detective Rodriguez. She's coordinating with Portland PD, and they're setting up surveillance on the house. If Sarah and David try to leave with Emma tonight, they'll be stopped. I slumped against the passenger door of his car, suddenly exhausted. I can't believe this is really happening. How could I have been so blind? Marcus took my hands in his expression gentle but serious. You trusted your friend. That's not something to be ashamed of. But now that we know the truth, we have a responsibility to that little girl. What happens next? The police will need DNA evidence to confirm Emma's identity, but they're confident enough in the other evidence to move forward. They'll probably make the arrest tomorrow morning when they can ensure Emma's safety. I thought about the baby who had spent the evening nestled in my arms, completely innocent and unaware that her entire world was about to change again. She's been with them for over a year, Marcus. As far as she knows, they're her parents. What's this going to do to her? I don't know, he admitted, but living with people who stole her isn't the answer, no matter how much they might claim to love her now. As we drove away from the house where I'd spent so many happy hours with the woman I'd thought was my best friend, I couldn't help but look back. Sarah was standing in the window, holding Emma and watching our car disappear into the night. Even from that distance, I could see the fear in her posture, the way she clutched the baby to her chest as if she could protect her from what was coming. Tomorrow, the truth would come out, and lives would be shattered. But tonight, Emma was still safe in the arms of the only parents she'd ever known, and I was the only person outside that house who knew that everything was about to change forever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's trusting face or Sarah's expression of growing panic as the evening had worn on. Marcus had tried to stay with me, but I'd sent him home around midnight, needing space to process what we'd discovered and what was about to happen. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. It was Detective Rodriguez. Ms. Chen, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Metro Police. I believe Marcus Williams spoke to you about the Morrison case? Yes, I said, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. We need you to come to the station this morning. We have some questions about your relationship with the suspects, and we may need your help with the child when we make the arrest. The word suspects hit me like a cold slap. Sarah and David were no longer my friends. They were suspects in a kidnapping case. When are you planning to arrest them? I asked. We're moving in about an hour. The house has been under surveillance all night, and they haven't attempted to leave. We're hoping to handle this as quietly as possible for the child's sake. An hour. In an hour, Emma's world would explode, and mine would never be the same. I arrived at the police station 40 minutes later to find Marcus already there, along with a woman I assumed was Detective Rodriguez, a tall, serious-looking officer with kind eyes, who immediately made me feel slightly more at ease. Thank you for coming in, Ms. Chen, she said, shaking my hand. I know this must be incredibly difficult for you. Have you heard anything from the house? I asked. They're still there. No signs of any attempt to flee, which is actually somewhat unusual in cases like this. Usually, once suspects realize they're under suspicion, they try to run. Marcus frowned. Maybe they don't realize we suspect anything. Maybe, Detective Rodriguez agreed. Or maybe they're planning something else. We have officers positioned around the house, and we're going in with a warrant in about 20 minutes. She led us to a small conference room where another officer was setting up what looked like monitoring equipment. We're going to ask you to listen to the arrest, she explained. If the child becomes distressed, we may need you to help calm her down. She knows your voice, and that could be crucial in keeping her safe during what's about to be a very traumatic situation. The next 20 minutes felt like an eternity. I found myself staring at the clock on the wall, watching the second hand tick away the last moments of Emma's life as she knew it. Somewhere across town, she was probably just waking up, maybe having breakfast, completely unaware that her world was about to shatter. At exactly 8 a.m., Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. Unit 12 in position. Unit 15 in position. All units, we have visual confirmation. 2 adults and 1 child in the residence, moving in now. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Marcus reached over and took my hand, squeezing gently. The next few minutes were a blur of radio chatter and distant sounds that I couldn't quite make out. Then suddenly, we could hear voices. Sarah's voice, high and panicked. "What is this about? What are you doing? You can't just come into our house like this." David's voice was calmer but strained. "Officers, I think there's been some kind of mistake. We haven't done anything wrong. Sarah Morrison, David Chen, you're under arrest for kidnapping and child endangerment," came the crisp voice of the arresting officer. There was a moment of silence, and then Sarah's voice again. But this time, it was different. Defeated. "My name isn't Sarah Morrison," she said quietly. "It's Jennifer Morrison." The confession hit the room like a physical blow. Even though we'd suspected it, hearing her admit it out loud made it real in a way that all the evidence hadn't. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," the officer continued with the Miranda warning, but I was no longer listening. All I could hear was Emma beginning to cry in the background, and the sound was like a knife through my heart. "The baby's upset," Detective Rodriguez said into her radio. "We need to calm her down." "This is why we needed you here," she said to me. "Are you ready?" I nodded, though I felt anything but ready. Detective Rodriguez spoke into her radio. "We're going to patch in someone the child knows. Stand by." A moment later, my voice was connected to the scene at the house. I could hear Emma crying more clearly now, and my heart broke for her confusion and fear. "Emma, sweetheart," I said, my voice as gentle as I could make it. "It's Aunt Jen. You remember me, don't you? From your birthday party yesterday?" The crying didn't stop, but it seemed to lessen slightly. "I know you're scared, baby girl, but these nice people are here to help you. They're going to take really good care of you." "Jen?" Sarah's voice came through the radio, and it was filled with desperation. "Jen, please, you don't understand. I love her. She's my daughter now. I've taken care of her for over a year. Please don't let them take her away from me." The raw pain in Sarah's voice almost broke my resolve. This was still my friend, still the woman who had been there for me through so much. But then I thought about another woman, Emma's real mother, who had been searching for her baby for over a year, living with the unimaginable pain of not knowing where her child was or if she was safe. "Sarah," I said carefully, "Emma needs to be with her real family." "I am her real family," Sarah screamed. "I'm the one who's been there for every night terror, every fever, every milestone. I'm the one who loves her." "Ma'am, you need to calm down," came the officer's voice. "The child is getting more upset." Detective Rodriguez nodded at me to continue talking to Emma. "Shh, sweetheart," I said softly. "Everything's going to be okay. These people are friends, and they're going to take you to see some other people who love you very much." "Her mother is flying in from Portland," Detective Rodriguez told me quietly. "She should be here by this afternoon." The thought of that reunion, a mother seeing her stolen child for the first time in over a year, brought tears to my eyes. But it also raised questions about what this transition would be like for Emma. She wouldn't remember her biological mother, and she'd been bonded to Sarah and David for most of her young life. "We have the suspects in custody," came the radio report. "The child is secure and unharmed. We're bringing everyone in now." Detective Rodriguez turned off the radio and looked at me seriously. "Ms. Chen, I need you to know that this is just the beginning. There will be a trial, and you'll likely be called as a witness. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about testifying against Sarah, about having to recount how I'd helped uncover her lies. "I'll do whatever I need to do for Emma." "Good. There's something else you should know. The child's real mother specifically asked if she could meet you. She wants to thank the people who helped bring her daughter home." The idea of meeting Emma's real mother was both terrifying and necessary. I needed to see that this was the right thing, that we'd done what was best for Emma. "When?" I asked. "This afternoon, when she arrives. But first, we need to get Emma settled with Child Protective Services until the custody situation can be sorted out legally." The next few hours passed in a haze of paperwork and statements. I recounted everything I could remember about Sarah and David's behavior, their stories about their past, any inconsistencies I might have noticed but dismissed. Marcus was interviewed separately, providing details about the missing persons case and how he'd made the connection. Around 2 p.m., Detective Rodriguez found me in the waiting area. "She's here," she said simply. "Emma's mother. Her name is Lisa Morrison, and she'd like to meet you now if you're ready." I followed her down a hallway to another conference room. The woman sitting inside was unmistakably Emma's mother. The same bright blue eyes, the same delicate features, though her face showed the strain of the past year. She looked up when we entered, and I saw a mixture of gratitude and pain in her expression. "You're Jennifer," she said, standing up. "You're the one who helped bring my Lily home." Lily. Her real name was Lily, not Emma, another piece of the false identity that Sarah and David had constructed. "I'm so sorry," I said, not knowing what else to say. "I had no idea. If I had known—" "You couldn't have known," Lisa said, reaching out to take my hands. "They were very good at what they did. The police told me they'd been planning this for months before they took her." "Planning?" Detective Rodriguez nodded. "We've uncovered evidence that David had been stalking Mrs. Morrison for several weeks before the kidnapping. He learned her routines when she was most vulnerable. The abduction wasn't random. It was carefully planned. The revelation made everything worse somehow. This hadn't been a crime of passion or desperation. It had been calculated and deliberate." "How is she?" I asked Lisa. "How is Lily handling all this?" Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "She doesn't remember me," she said quietly. "She's scared and confused, and she keeps asking for Sarah. The psychologist says that's normal, that it will take time for her to readjust, but it's heartbreaking. I could only imagine the pain of having your own child look at you like a stranger while crying for her kidnapper." "Can I see her?" I asked. "I know it might not help, but maybe a familiar face." "The social worker thinks that might be a good idea," Detective Rodriguez said. "If you're willing, we'd like you to help with the transition. Lily trusts you, and that could make this easier for everyone." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a cheerfully decorated room at the Child Protective Services office, waiting for them to bring in the little girl I'd known as Emma. When the door opened and the social worker led her in, my heart clenched. She looked so small and confused, her eyes red from crying. "Lily," I said softly, using her real name for the first time. "Hi, sweetheart." She looked at me for a moment, then ran over and climbed into my lap, burying her face against my shoulder. She was seeking comfort from the one familiar thing in a world that had suddenly become strange and frightening. "I know everything seems scary right now," I whispered to her, "but there are people here who love you very much and want to take care of you." Through the observation window, I could see Lisa watching us, tears streaming down her face. She was seeing her daughter find comfort in the arms of a virtual stranger, unable to provide that comfort herself. But as I held Lily and felt her gradually relax against me, I knew that this was just the beginning of her journey back to where she belonged. It would take time, patience, and a lot of love, but she would find her way back to her real mother. And someday, maybe she would understand that everything we'd done had been for her, to bring her home to where she truly belonged. 3 months later, I sat in a coffee shop in downtown Portland, waiting for Lisa Morrison. She'd called the week before, asking if I'd be willing to visit, to see how Lily was adjusting to her new life. The trial was still months away, but the legal custody battle was over. Lily was officially back with her biological mother, though the transition had been anything but easy. Lisa arrived right on time, looking healthier than she had the day we'd first met. The strain was still there in her eyes, but there was something else now too. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of healing. "Thank you for coming," she said as she sat down across from me. "I know this is a long way to travel just for a visit." "How is she?" I asked, the question that had been weighing on me for months. Lisa's smile was complicated. "Better. Some days are harder than others, but she's starting to trust me. The therapy is helping both of us understand how to rebuild our relationship." She pulled out her phone and showed me a recent photo. Lily looked bigger, healthier, and she was smiling, a genuine, carefree smile that I hadn't seen since before the arrest. "She still asks about Sarah sometimes," Lisa continued. "The therapist says that's normal. Sarah was the only mother she remembered, so of course she misses her. But she's also starting to bond with me. Yesterday, she called me Mama for the first time since I got her back. I felt tears prick my eyes. That must have been incredible." "It was." Lisa's voice was soft. "I never thought I'd hear that word again. For a year, I dreamed about it every night." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in our thoughts. Then Lisa leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to ask you something," she said. "Would you like to see her? She remembers you, and I think it might be good for her to see that you're okay, that you're still in her life in some way." The idea of seeing Lily again both thrilled and terrified me. "Are you sure? I don't want to confuse her or make things harder for you. Actually, I think it might help. You're a bridge between her old life and her new one. The therapist thinks that having some continuity could be beneficial." An hour later, we were walking up the steps to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Lisa had explained that they'd moved after getting Lily back. Too many reporters had found their old address, and she wanted to give her daughter a fresh start, somewhere peaceful. The house was modest but warm, with children's toys visible through the front window and colorful drawings taped to the refrigerator that I could see through the kitchen doorway. It looked like a real home, filled with the comfortable chaos of a toddler's life. "Lily, sweetheart," Lisa called as we entered. "Someone special is here to see you." I heard the sound of small feet running, and then Lily appeared around the corner. She was bigger than I remembered, her hair longer and her face more mature, but those brilliant blue eyes were exactly the same. She stopped when she saw me, tilting her head with the serious expression that I remembered so well. "Jen," she said, using the nickname she'd given me during those last visits at the CPS office. "Hi, Lily," I said, kneeling down to her level. "Look how big you've gotten." She ran to me then, throwing her arms around my neck with the uninhibited affection that only very young children possess. As I held her, I was struck by how much more settled she seemed. The anxious energy that had clung to her during those difficult first weeks was gone, replaced by the natural confidence of a child who felt secure in her environment. "Mama, can Jen see my room?" Lily asked, looking back at Lisa with an expression of pure trust. The casual way she called Lisa Mama brought tears to my eyes. It was clear that whatever struggles they'd faced in rebuilding their relationship, they'd made tremendous progress. "Of course, baby girl," Lisa said, her own eyes bright with emotion. "Why don't you show her your new dollhouse?" Lily grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hallway, chattering excitedly about her toys and her room and her new friend from the playground. Her bedroom was painted a soft lavender, with a toddler bed covered in books and stuffed animals. It was the room of a child who was loved and cherished, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had surrounded her 3 months ago. As Lily showed me her dollhouse, an elaborate wooden structure that Lisa had clearly spent considerable time helping her set up, I found myself thinking about Sarah. Despite everything she'd done, I couldn't forget the genuine love she'd shown for the child she'd called Emma, the way she'd held her, protected her, cared for her during those long months when Lisa had been desperately searching. Jen, Lily said, interrupting my thoughts. Why did Emmy's mama go away? The question hit me like a physical blow. Even though months had passed, Lily still remembered Sarah and still thought of her in maternal terms. I looked helplessly at Lisa, unsure how to answer such a complicated question. Lisa sat down on the floor next to us, her expression gentle but serious. "Do you remember what we talked about, sweetheart? About how you have just one real mama, and that's me?" Lily nodded solemnly. "But Emmy's mama loved me too." "I know she did," Lisa said, and I was amazed by her grace in acknowledging Sarah's feelings. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices even when they think they're doing something good. Emmy's mama made a bad choice when she took you away from me, but that doesn't mean she didn't love you. It was the most diplomatic explanation possible, for an impossible situation? How do you explain to a 2-year-old that the woman who raised her for half her life was actually a kidnapper who stole her from her real family? Will I see her again? Lily asked. Lisa's pause was barely perceptible, but I caught it. I don't think so, baby girl. But you'll always remember the good times you had together, and that's okay. The truth was that Sarah was facing 20 years in prison, and even if she was somehow released early, there would be restraining orders preventing her from having any contact with Lily. But that was far too complex for a toddler to understand. We spent the next hour playing with toys and reading books, and I was struck by how normal it all felt. Lily was thriving in her environment, clearly bonded with Lisa, and seemed to be developing into a happy, healthy child despite the trauma of her early years. When it was time for me to leave, Lily hugged me tightly and made me promise to visit again soon. As Lisa walked me to the door, I felt compelled to ask the question that had been weighing on me. "How do you do it?" I said quietly. "How do you not hate Sarah for what she put you through?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, looking back toward the living room where Lily was now playing contentedly with her blocks. "I did hate her," she said finally. "For months, hatred was the only thing that kept me going. But then I got Lily back, and I realized that hating Sarah wouldn't change anything that happened. It wouldn't give me back that lost year, and it wouldn't help Lily heal from the confusion and trauma." She paused, choosing her words carefully. Sarah made a terrible choice that caused incredible pain for everyone involved, but she also took care of my daughter when I couldn't, and for that, I have to find some way to be grateful, even while I can never forgive what she did. As I drove back to the airport that evening, I thought about the complexity of the situation we'd all found ourselves in. There were no clear heroes or villains, just people who had made choices, some good, some catastrophically bad, and a little girl who was learning to navigate the consequences of decisions made by adults. The trial was still approaching, and I knew that the hardest part was yet to come. I would have to testify against Sarah, the woman who had been my best friend for years. I would have to stand in front of a jury and describe how I'd helped uncover her deception. It would be painful for everyone involved, but it was necessary for justice to be served. But today, I'd seen proof that sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to. Lily was home with her real mother, surrounded by love and security. She was healing from her trauma and building the life she should have had all along. Marcus had been right that night at the birthday party when he'd insisted we talk outside. He'd known something about Sarah's baby that changed everything, and his courage in speaking up had ultimately brought a stolen child home to her family. As my plane lifted off from Portland, I looked down at the city lights below and thought about the little girl who was probably getting ready for bed in her lavender room, surrounded by books and toys and the unconditional love of her real mother. Tomorrow, she would wake up in the home where she belonged, safe and secure and free to grow up as the person she was meant to be. And somewhere, in a prison cell, Sarah would wake up to face another day of consequences for the choice she'd made to steal another woman's child. I felt sorry for her. I couldn't help it. She'd been my friend for so long, but I didn't regret the role I'd played in bringing the truth to light. Sometimes the right thing is also the hardest thing, and sometimes love means letting go, even when it breaks your heart. Sarah had loved Lily, but not enough to put Lily's needs above her own desires. Lisa's love, on the other hand, was the kind that sacrificed everything for her child's well-being, even enduring a year of unimaginable pain to get her daughter back. 3 months after that terrible night, when Marcus had said, "Let's talk outside," I could finally see that we'd made the right choice. It hadn't been about jealousy at all. It had been about justice and truth and a little girl's right to be with the family that truly belonged to her. The plane climbed higher into the night sky, carrying me back to my own life, but part of my heart would always remain in that small house in Portland, where a mother and daughter were rebuilding their bond one day at a time, proving that love really can overcome even the most devastating betrayals. In the end, we had all learned that family isn't just about who raises you, it's about who belongs to you by right, by blood, by the irreplaceable bond between a mother and the child she carried in her womb and in her heart through the darkest year of her life. Lily was finally home, and that made all the pain and difficulty worthwhile. Some stories don't have happy endings, but this one did. It just took longer than anyone expected to get there. 2 years later, I stood outside the courthouse steps on a grey November morning, watching Sarah being led away in handcuffs for the final time. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, and the jury had deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with their verdict: guilty on all counts of kidnapping, child endangerment, and identity fraud. The judge had sentenced her to 18 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 12. Marcus stood beside me, his hand warm in mine. We'd gotten married 8 months ago, and the experience of going through this ordeal together had only strengthened our bond. He'd been my anchor through the difficult months of testimony, media attention, and the painful process of watching my former best friend face justice for her crimes. "How do you feel?" he asked as we watched the prison transport van disappear around the corner. "Empty," I said honestly. "I thought I'd feel closure, but mostly I just feel sad." The trial had revealed even more disturbing details about Sarah and David's crimes. They had indeed been planning the kidnapping for months, stalking Lisa and learning her routines. David had posed as a utility worker to gain access to her apartment building, and Sarah had studied child development to better care for a stolen baby. Most chilling of all, they'd had backup plans, other potential victims they'd been watching in case their first attempt failed. David had received a 22-year sentence and had shown no remorse throughout the trial. But Sarah had been different. During her testimony, she'd broken down completely, apologizing to Lisa and begging for forgiveness, while still insisting that she'd given Lily a loving home. "I know what I did was wrong," she'd said through tears on the witness stand, "but I loved her. I loved her so much, and I gave her everything I had. I know that doesn't make it right, but I need everyone to know that she was never hurt, never unloved, not for a single day." It was that testimony that had haunted me throughout the trial. The Sarah I'd known, my college friend who'd helped me through breakups and family crises, had been genuine, but she'd also been capable of a calculated, devastating crime that had torn apart multiple families. Lisa had handled the trial with incredible dignity. She testified about the year of hell she'd endured, searching for her daughter, never knowing if Lily was alive or dead. She'd described the nightmares, the false leads, the way the police investigation had initially focused on her as a suspect. But she'd also acknowledged that Lily had been well cared for during her time with Sarah and David. "I'm grateful that my daughter was safe and loved, even though she was stolen from me," Lisa had said during her victim impact statement. "But that doesn't diminish the trauma of losing her or the joy of getting her back." Now, as Marcus and I walked back to our car, I thought about how all our lives had been forever changed by that birthday party 2 years ago. If Marcus hadn't recognized Sarah from the missing persons case, if he hadn't been brave enough to speak up despite knowing it would destroy friendships and lives, Lily might still be living a lie. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't figured it out?" I asked as we drove home. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "But then I think about Lily with her real mother. And I know we did the right thing. We'd continued to visit Portland every few months, watching Lily grow and thrive with Lisa. Now 4 years old, she was a bright, confident child who called Lisa Mommy without hesitation and had no memory of ever being called Emma. The trauma of her early separation and the confusion of her transition had been carefully addressed through therapy, and she was developing into a happy, well-adjusted little girl. Lisa had started dating someone, a kind man named Tom, who worked as a teacher and was wonderful with Lily. They'd invited us to their engagement party next month, and Lily was excited to be a flower girl at their wedding. She'd found her happy ending, and she deserved every moment of it. But I still thought about Sarah sometimes, especially on quiet evenings like this one. I'd tried writing to her in prison once, but had thrown the letter away without sending it. What was there to say? How do you maintain a friendship with someone who committed such a devastating crime, even if you understood that their motivations came from a place of twisted love? When we got home, there was a letter waiting in our mailbox. The return address made my heart skip a beat. It was from the state correctional facility where Sarah was serving her sentence. Marcus saw my expression as I stared at the envelope. You don't have to read it if you're not ready. But I was ready. It had been 2 years, and I needed to know what Sarah wanted to say to me. The letter was written in Sarah's familiar handwriting, though it seemed shakier than I remembered. Dear Jennifer, I know I have no right to write to you after everything that's happened, but I needed you to know how sorry I am for the pain I caused you. You were my best friend, and I dragged you into something terrible without your knowledge or consent. I've had a lot of time to think about my choices, and I understand now how selfish and cruel they were. I told myself I was saving Lily from something, that I could give her a better life, but the truth is that I stole her because I wanted to be a mother so desperately that I was willing to destroy other lives to get what I wanted. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to, but I want you to know that your friendship meant everything to me, and losing it has been one of the hardest consequences of my actions. You were always the best person I knew, and I'm grateful that you were there to make sure Lily got back to where she belonged. Please tell Lisa that I think about her and Lily every day, and that I hope they found peace and happiness. I know I can never make up for what I took from them, but I pray that someday they can forgive me. I don't expect you to write back or to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm grateful you were brave enough to do the right thing when I was too selfish to do it myself. Love always, Sarah. I read the letter twice, then handed it to Marcus. As he read it, I found myself crying, not just for the friendship I'd lost, but for the woman Sarah could have been if she'd made different choices. She sounds different, Marcus said when he finished reading. More aware of what she did. Prison will do that to you, I said. 2 years to think about your mistakes. Are you going to write back? I considered it. Part of me wanted to maintain that connection, to try to salvage something from the wreckage of our friendship. But another part of me knew that some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Maybe, I said finally, someday, but not yet. That night, as Marcus and I got ready for bed, I thought about the strange turns life could take. 2 years ago, I'd thought my biggest worry was whether my boyfriend was jealous of the attention I was giving to a baby. Now that baby was back with her real family, my boyfriend had become my husband, and my best friend was in prison for kidnapping. But out of all that chaos and pain, good things had emerged too. Lily was thriving with Lisa. Marcus and I had built a stronger relationship based on trust and shared values. And I'd learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are also the most important ones. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about forgiveness. How Lisa had found a way to forgive Sarah enough to acknowledge that Lily had been loved during her captivity. How Sarah was learning to forgive herself enough to take responsibility for her actions. And how maybe someday I would find a way to forgive my former friend for the lies and betrayal that had shattered our relationship. But tonight, it was enough to know that everyone was where they belonged. Lily was safe with her real mother. Sarah was facing the consequences of her choices, and I was building a life with a man who had the courage to speak up when speaking up was the hardest thing to do. Sometimes justice takes time, and sometimes healing takes even longer. But in the end, truth has a way of surfacing. Love finds a way to triumph, and families, real families, find their way back to each other. The story that had begun with a simple request to talk outside at a birthday party had finally reached its conclusion. And while it hadn't been the ending any of us had expected, it was the ending that everyone deserved.